Halftime show. Terry Ford, some dude in the other room who we must have hired someone new. Or a new guy. Some newbie.
Contrary to
Didn't tell me about. Who hires people around here? Who's in charge of this? Who's in charge of this circus? Our buddy Tyler Head back from Daytona, where, I said this yesterday. I said, you'll be back today unless you can get a gig somewhere in the pits. Because if you got a gig in the pits, it doesn't matter how much they're paying you, you ain't coming back.
Got to wait for you to put your headphones on so you can hear me.
I will say this. I've known a lot of people who dig NASCAR.
Sure.
I haven't met many a gearhead as gearheady as you.
Well, I was listening on the way back yesterday on the 107.5 The Game app as I was driving through Jacksonville and up the Georgia coastline, and I did hear that. So, no, I did not get offered anything while I was down there. So, yes, I am back here today.
Did you drop off your resume to the pit crew? I wonder if that's how you get a job with the pit crew. Do you have a resume? Do you sit down for an interview? Do you put a suit on?
Usually you have to be like a former Division I athlete to get one of those jobs.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Tons of...
Because of the athleticism and the physicality of what you're doing?
There's former college football players, basketball players, wrestlers, all kinds of stuff down there in the pits.
Well, I'd have a wrestler just if a guy did something dirty to me on the track and we all pit together, I want to send the former wrestler over there to beat the crap out.
Yeah, you got to be able to fight, too. That's certainly an aspect of it, too, that comes into play sometimes.
So that's probably part of the interview process is like, okay, man, we like what you've got here so far. I need you to go beat the crap out of that guy in the other room.
Yeah. Also, you got to be able to carry a tire that weighs, 80 pounds.
I was going to say, those tires aren't light.
They're not. Also, gas cans weigh about 100 themselves, jacks.
So basically, you're telling me physically you got no shot.
Yeah, not really.
Guess what? Me either. No, Terry, you can't roll the tire. You've got to pick it up. Dude, I can't pick this thing up.
The days of guys with beer guts turning a wrench in the pits, those are long gone.
That's funny. Isn't it funny how it's changed?
It has.
When I was a kid, I remember everybody talked like this. They were just a bunch of dudes who ran moonshine or could drive a car really fast.
Sure.
Or they came up through the dirt tracks and small tracks and everything else. And then all of a sudden, you got dudes, was Alan Kowicki with a master's degree or whatever it was. Back, and you got all these guys now who are college graduates. And you got dudes from California who don't talk like this.
Right.
And I'm just like, what the hell happened to the NASCAR I grew up on? So now I just found out the guys in the pits no longer are guys with man boobs and beer guts, but they're like high-level athletes who have to pick up like 100-pound gas cans.
That's right.
Really ruining this sport.
The kid that won the Daytona 500 started his career on a computer.
I know. How funny is that story? That's a great story. I was on a computer racing, and now I just won the Daytona 500. Do you know how many old school drivers want to kill him?
I'm sure. But, he's talented.
He won the Daytona 500. Who won in 2011?
Trevor Bayne.
Look at you. We had that in history yesterday.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. Which race was it? How many races had he had?
That was only his second race.
Man, you are stupid.
That was the Wood Brothers' 99th win. They're still chasing. 98th win. They're still chasing 100.
Yeah, you're vile.
I know.
It's really, it's impressive to the point of scary and disturbing.
Oh yeah, no.
How much NASCAR you know?
It was a fun weekend.
Honestly, what was the most fun you had?
Oh God, honestly, seeing the track for the first time, and I tweeted it out yesterday or on Monday. When I finally got to my seat, it kind of reminded me of like the scene in Rudy where his dad sees Notre Dame Stadium for the first time. It's just like the anticipation of your entire life kind of leading up to that moment. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember. I've never been to Daytona. I went to the Monster Mile at Dover.
Yeah.
And looking at the banking of these tracks, you don't realize. Yes. Yep. You don't realize what the banking is like.
Yep.
And once you see the banking you're like, oh my God, how do you keep the car on the track?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So I got to go fast through there.
Exactly. So I can just see your face seeing the track at Daytona for the first time.
Oh yeah, very cool experience. Just the aura around it. And I've been to thought about this driving back yesterday. I think that was my 26th race I've ever been to. I try and go to at least one a year. I've been to Atlanta, Darlington, Talladega, all important races, but something about the aura of the 500 was just different.
It's a Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Why you have it to start the year, I don't know, but it's a Super Bowl.
That's just how it's always been done.
And it's just different. Now, I used to always say this because look, going to a race is cool.
Sure.
I've been to a few NASCAR races, and that's an experience. I would go to a NASCAR race tomorrow.
Sure.
That was fun.
Sure.
I enjoyed, the fact I can't hear for 2 days afterwards, the scenery's really nice.
Right.
You get to watch the pits move and all this, and the scenery's really nice.
Right.
And did I bring that up?
Yes.
And so a NASCAR race in itself to go is an experience. It's fun.
Right.
I would have season tickets if someone gave them to me because it's just a good time.
Sure.
Sitting in my house watching it on TV,
It's not for everyone.
not my thing.
Gotta be invested in it.
All I ever do, but I would have said back when I was just a host, I would be like, look, the only thing I do always watch the last 50 laps of the Daytona 500 because it's the Super Bowl of NASCAR.
Right.
So I always would invest myself in the last 50 laps of Daytona. Not watching the Goodwrench rubber tire 400 out of, East Plano, Texas or whatever. I'm not doing it.
Sure.
But I will sit and I would watch the last 50 laps of Daytona.
Yeah.
I also thought the Brickyard was kind of interesting because they're running at Indy.
Mm-hmm.
With this hallowed ground and everything else.
That's right.
But I always made myself a rule that I will watch the last 50 laps of Daytona on my TV.
Yep.
No matter how painful that will be for me because it's a Super Bowl of NASCAR.
Right.
So to be there had to be massively cool.
Yeah, and the last stage, the last 30 or so laps, just the intensity continued to ramp up.
Oh, yeah.
And it was just like, I don't know. I'd never experienced anything like that before. It was really cool to be there.
The other thing, too, people, you don't get it, is you don't understand. They're going bleeping almost 200 miles an hour, over 200 miles an hour at times.
Oh, yeah.
This is, think about you driving on I-20.
Right.
Now double it or triple it.
Triple it.
And there you are. Well, me double it, but that's another story. So you're just the idea that you're driving with how many other cars on a track in that situation where everybody's millimeters apart. And oh, by the way, you're going 200 miles an hour.
Yeah. No, it's daring.
It's craziness.
Yeah.
It's fun.
And speaking of close together, they had the Blue Angels that did the flyover before. They fly 18 inches apart at like 400 miles an hour. And they did like the air show. Honestly, they flew so low, you feel like you reach out there and touch
they
them.
look at NASCAR guys and go, you're only going 200?
Yeah.
Really? That's it? Seriously?
So, yeah. Just cool apps for The Rock was there, gave the command to start engines. It was pretty neat.
Now, what was it, 100,000 people?
Roughly 100,000. I think Daytona holds like 120. And for a Monday race, it was packed.
It's packed.
Yeah.
Even though it was Monday.
Right.
So the crowd's intense. The racing, the last 30 laps had to be crazy.
Right. And it's one of those things that, again, I've been to Atlanta, Darlington, Talladega. There's always a casual element of the crowd there. This is and again, it does cost a pretty penny to go to the Daytona 500. I feel like this crowd was more invested than any other crowd I've seen, like more serious race fans there than others. And there were certainly casual fans there too, but I feel like everybody was more locked in for this one than I've seen at other races before.
No, it's I've heard it's a different vibe there, man.
Yeah, very, very cool. Again, had to wait out the rain a little bit. Took an extra day, but we got it done.
Now, next year you go to Biker Week too.
That's like 2 weeks away.
Yeah.
They were like promoting that while
You
I
got to
was
go back to
down there,
Biker Week.
Which it's kind of interesting when you kind of think about it, because look, people typically don't go to the beach in January, February, and kind of stuff like that. But the way that they like strategically place out events to keep them relevant all year long, because we were driving through, it was nasty on Saturday, and we drove down to the beach just to look at it and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know who would come to the beach this time of year other than to come to these kind of events, but it's like, oh, well, that's why they had these in February and January and stuff like that, because it gives you a reason to come down there, buy hotels, food, all that kind of stuff, when beach going isn't usually the norm.
When I was in Ohio, we went and did a remote. So I was in my music radio days.
Yeah.
We did a remote from a biker weekend in Western PA.
Bet you saw some things there.
Hey, yeah, buddy. Put it this way: we did a best tattoo contest, and we had prize money and everything. Quite interesting tattoos and quite interesting places.
I was gonna say the locations of the tattoos
Yes.
are probably wild.
I'll leave it at that. So take that little thing and multiply it by like maybe 100, and you get Biker Week at Daytona. My second oldest right now, won't bore you with the story, is near Sturgis.
Oh, okay.
He went through that last year. The biker week.
Yeah.
He said you'll never see anything like it in your life. Hey, there's a lot of things you saw you can't unsee.
WCW used to do a pay-per-view out there called Hog Wild, literally in the middle of Bike Week at Sturgis.
It's nuts. He said it was, he goes, take Insane and just Insane on steroids is Bike Week at Sturgis.
Oh, yeah.
Is what he was telling me.
I can only imagine.
Anyway, I'm glad you had a good time.
Yeah, fantastic.
Glad you had fun. Now, because your wife gave you those for Christmas, you and I talked about this. So you got a Christmas present of Daytona 500 tickets.
Yes, I did.
There's two things there. A, good woman.
Yes.
Picked a winner.
For sure.
Nice job by you. Now here comes the backside. Now you got to at least equal it or top it.
Yeah, she's a really good gift giver, and I'm not. I'm very much the person, like, if you don't tell me what you want, I'm going to have a real tough time finding something.
Some people, now I'm like you. Some people are either you're really good at it or you suck.
Sure.
There's really not a good middle ground on gift giving. Either and the good people they're around you all year, and then when it's time to buy a gift, they go, you know what? I remember in March.
Yep.
When Tyler, we were at that store and he reached for that thing and he said he liked it. I'm going to get him one. I'm not that person.
Like my niece's birthday is next month, and at some point in the next couple of days, I'm gonna be like, hey, what does she want? And she usually send me like an Amazon list of a couple different things. I'm like, perfect. Order it, comes to the door a couple days later, done. This whole all right, I gotta go to the store and go through the aisle and figure out what a 7-year-old girl wants for her birthday. It's not easy.
Good luck for that. Because you know what? We were never 7-year-old girls.
No, we were
it's
not.
Very difficult.
Exactly.
Very difficult.
My nephew, a little bit easier. All right.
Oh,
Monster trucks, dinosaurs, all that kind of stuff.
You're good. But yeah, that's the thing. When it comes to the gift giving, now you're on the clock, friend.
That's right.
Good luck. Go get them. That's when you go to her parents.
That's right.
You need some guy to help me here.
Yes.
I got at least match Daytona. I need some help. And by the way, you work in radio. Save money. Anyway,
I do what I can.
Get a loan. All right. And we'll talk more to Tyler about his trip to Daytona through the show. Get back in here. Baseball, nice 10-run rule win over Winthrop in the midweek yesterday. We'll get into that a little bit coming back here from Mark Kingston. Don't forget, once again today against Queens, 3:45 4 o'clock first pitch, just like yesterday. South Carolina and Queens midweek baseball with the Gamecocks. You can hear it right here on the game in Columbia at 107.5 or in Myrtle Beach at 100.3. Also, we got tickets. We're going to give away 2 pair of tickets for today's game coming up here in just a little bit, so be ready for that. But we will come back, and we will check out yesterday's win over Winthrop, hear from the coach, Mark Kingston, his thoughts on whether it was Copper, his pitching performance, Causey offensively. We'll get to Mark Kingston and what he thinks next here on the Halftime Show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game. All right, so let's say you want to get yourself like a new tub, new shower, lighting you want to change in the house, maybe new stove, refrigerator, whatever the case. Maybe new fixtures. You can go to the store where that's in aisle 10. In aisle 11, you can buy some Pine Sol. In aisle 12, you can get some tires. Oh, look over here in aisle 6, Pampers. Or you can go to a place where they have 70 years experience. The Nest, 1331 Gadsden Street in the Vista. Make an appointment. You come in, you talk with an expert about whatever you're looking for, whether it's a shower, a tub, a stove, a refrigerator, fixtures, lighting. 70 years of experience total at the Nest. They will sit down with you. They will talk about what you want, what they can offer you to get your goal achieved. Also do it within your budget. It's the Nest. Call, set an appointment, 803-978-2025. That's 803-978-2025. The Nest on Gadsden. Halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head, as we roll this sucker up until 3 on the game. Do not forget 3:45 pregame, 4 o'clock first pitch, South Carolina and Queens. More midweek baseball with the Gamecocks, the undefeated Gamecocks here on 107.5 The Game in Columbia and 100.3 The Game in Myrtle Beach. All right, speaking of the victory yesterday, the 10-run beatdown of Winthrop, Mark Kingston postgame talked about, we'll focus on a couple different things here. First of all, we'll focus on what Mark Kingston said about Tyler Causey. It's a great story. Causey, of course, at North Carolina, had injuries, basically stopped playing for a bit. And now Causey is back, and he is looking pretty good as a Gamecock in the short stint. Here's Mark Kingston talking about Tyler Causey.
No, he's a great story. There's no question. If 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 there's no question.
That's good. He says it's a great story and there's no question.
If there's no question. If there's no question. If there's no question.
That was good. Tell me we don't try it again, Dave. We'll give that a whirl again here in a minute. Give it a shot again. What the heck? Well, that's going on. My computer's going haywire, too. So things are going well electronically here. Are we good? Try it again? Did it work? Nothing. All right, great. We'll try that again later. But, Causey, again, from North Carolina, sat out, basically thought he was hanging it up. And instead, he came back at South Carolina, and it's been all good as a Gamecock. And so the home run yesterday where he went yard, the first few games, Causey good at bats. He's driven in runs. It's been a nice find. Again, not compared to Ethan Petrie, but just again, a guy that you said, wow. I mean, Petrie didn't even start the first couple of games, remember? And then after that, he became what he became. And you're not expecting Tyler Causey to be that guy, but still, if you can get a guy who you go, you know what, there's a lot of potential there, we'll see where it goes. If he is, going to be productive for us, and then you see what happens. And at the end of the day, so far, so good. We'll try another one, Dave. Why not? Let's get crazy. The young fellow, Mr. Copper, on the mound showed himself really well. Here's Mark Kingston about Copper.
I mean, he had all his pitches.
All righty. That's fantastic. I like it. Mark's kind of got that thing going like he's beatboxing or something. Wow. Yeah, just reboot the mess. We'll start over. Oh, man. Anyway. So, whew, that was good. But Mark Kingston, I mean, when you had the young freshman, Copper, who basically, struggled in his first outing, had the jitters, even talk about having the freshman jitters, right? And got taken out for 3 hitters, came back out yesterday and was phenomenal for 4 innings. And Matthew Becker will go today, would have gone probably on the weekend, but had the little lat problem. And you've already seen with SQ and with Kimball and with Jones what you've had. So if Becker's only going to go a couple innings today. That's going to be it. But Becker, if healthy, to go with Jones and to go with Kimball and SQ, and maybe you find something, whether in Copper or some of these other pitchers that you're hoping can step up for you. The big question mark, which is your pitching, all of a sudden isn't as much of a question mark as it was coming into the year, sort of like last year where the offense was a question mark. And then before all the injuries kicked in, South Carolina was a real good offensive team. So we'll see. But so far, so good. Again, you're not going up against SEC bats. You're not, you'll find out a little bit more when you take on Clemson starting March 1st. But, for what you're doing early in the year against non-conference opponents that, you should be successful against, you got to be happy with the results so far if you're South Carolina. So, again, today, 3:45 pregame, 4 o'clock first pitch. Gamecocks will be taking on Queens. Matthew Becker taking the ball. We'll see Becker probably for a couple innings. And then we'll roll out some more arms through which should be hopefully a victory for South Carolina. Couple of tickets. Tyler, you ready? Let's give away some tickets.
Let's do it.
Let's do this. We'll give away a pair. We'll do caller number 5. Caller number 5 gets a pair of tickets for today's game against Queens. Again, 4 o'clock first pitch. Caller number 5, 803-404-6100. We'll do this twice during the show. Here's the first pair again, 803-404-6100. Give us a holler. Caller number 5 will get you in, and you'll win 2 tickets for today's game, 4 o'clock start. Also, we got a couple of contests going on here at the game. First of all, remember the Lawyer Lisa Special Teams contest we did in the fall? That was fun. Got up to like $1,000. It was good times. And then South Carolina scored a special teams touchdown. We're doing kind of the same thing with this time the Grand Slam from Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union. It's a Grand Slam giveaway. Every game, $25 is added to the pot. Right now, after 4 games, up to $100. If a Gamecock hitter would smack a Grand Slam today, you'd win $100. If not, the pot grows to $125 for the next game. See how it goes? See? To register, just like the Lawyer Lisa contest for the special teams, you go to 1075thegame.com. You look for the Grand Slam giveaway, little flippy thingy, media roll, promo reel thing. When you see it, you click, you fill out the form. You got to qualify every week. So you qualify and you're in. We'll be doing it all baseball season. Again, it's from Palmetto Citizens Federal Credit Union and us here at the game. Again, very easy. Go on the website and get yourself registered. The other contest, if you want to go see Clemson in South Carolina at Founders Friday, March 1st, first thing you do is you go to our YouTube channel, The Game TV. You subscribe, then you go to 1075 The Game. Look for the Rivalry Friday ticket giveaway, little thing on the flippy deal. Click on it, fill out the form, and you're in for a pair of tickets to go check out South Carolina Clemson March 1st at Founders, part of the rivalry weekend with the Tigers. Couple contests, very simple to get into. We had to make them simple because, we're radio people. We're not that smart. So very simple to get to. Jump in and give yourself a chance to win. I will come back. All right. Carolina calls tonight. Lamont Paris is on. He'll be talking about, obviously, the last couple of games, which have not gone well for the Gamecocks, and also what's coming up this weekend against Ole Miss. We'll delve a little bit into where South Carolina is now after their little mini 2-game skid regarding bracketology and the net and all that stuff. We'll get into it next. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. Halftime show till 3 on The Game. All righty, halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head running till 3 here on the game. Carolina calls. For some reason, I think today's Thursday. I'm all screwed up with the day off.
It's a short week.
Today's Wednesday. Tomorrow night's Carolina calls, 6 p.m. 6:30 pregame on our sister station, ESPN 1320 WISW. The women will take the court, 7 o'clock, full broadcast right here on the game. So, again, 6:30, the women against Alabama starting on the AM, then popping to 107.5 The Game in Columbia at 7 o'clock for the full broadcast. All right, so now that I'm not going to say everybody settled down from the loss against LSU at home. A bad loss. It's a bad loss. It's just worst loss of the year. Let's just not sugarcoat it. And a game you should have won. You had it in control. You should have won. You still should have won it at the end. And for the first time all year, you didn't make the plays you needed to make to win the game. It happens. Things happen. So, at the end of the day, you just move forward. This schedule is not easy. You've got 5 quad 1 games coming up, according to the net. 5 quad 1s. And if you look at it, all right, Florida's a 7 seed in bracketology right now. Mississippi State's a 10 seed in bracketology. Tennessee's a 2 seed in bracketology. Texas A&M is last 4 with byes, and right now Ole Miss is among the last 4 in. So every team you're going to play the rest of the year, according to bracketology, is in the NCAA tournament.
Right.
3 of these games are on the road. I get the gloom and doom. I understand. I know. Believe me. I was getting texts after the Saturday loss. Oh, NIT, here we come. Not going to win another game all year. We're screwed. I get it. I understand. Someone said to me, Terry, besides the Final Four run, there hasn't been a whole lot of happiness about men's basketball around here in a long time.
Sure.
I get it. But if you look at every one of these games, Tennessee's going to come in looking for revenge. You're in a bad mood. I get it. Florida's been smoking hot lately. Going to Mississippi State isn't easy. Ole Miss has lost 1 game at home all year. And A&M has got talent. They're just weird. I mean, they can beat you by 10 or lose by 10 to you. They just lost to Arkansas, who's been terrible all year.
Right.
So, as much as you look at these games, and again, glass totally empty because of the past, you go, hey, lose every one of these. But all you got to do is go 2-3. I said this yesterday. If you can win 2 of the last 5, you're fine, and you're in the NCAA tournament no matter what you do in the SEC tournament.
I think you can make the argument that, they could lose all 5 of these games, or they could win all 5 of them. And they've proven this season that they can play with anybody, but unfortunately they've also proven that they can, stumble a little bit against teams they, on paper, are a whole lot better than. Look at Georgia, look at LSU this past weekend. Going to Ole Miss, a team that took you down to the wire a couple weeks back at Colonial Life Arena, going to be tough. Texas A&M's beaten some very good teams at home, including Tennessee, Florida, and Kentucky themselves. So that's not going to be easy. Florida, a very fast-paced team that South Carolina has played well against teams like that. As you mentioned, Tennessee's going to be out for blood when they come to Colonial Life Arena in a couple weeks. And then going to Starkville to wrap up the season against another physically aggressive team. When it comes to defense, that could obviously go either way. So I agree with you. I think another 2 wins, because at the end of the day, it's about your resume as a whole, not always what you've done for me lately. Now, if you end the season on a 7-game losing streak, that's going to be glaring for the committee to look at, but I don't think that's going to happen. They should find the way to win at least 2 of these games. I don't know which 2. I don't think it really matters when we're talking about all quad 1 wins at this point in time. And you certainly want to ride some kind of momentum going into the SEC tournament and ultimately the NCAA tournament. And hopefully this full week off now that you have before you take on Ole Miss on Saturday can allow them to kind of look in the mirror a little bit and readjust.
Yeah, you got a week to get yourself back to where you were. And this has been a well-coached team. They've been good at both ends of the court. They've gotten better at both ends of the court as the season has progressed, especially in defensive end. They had some defensive breakdowns against LSU. These things happen. It's a long bleeping season, man. You're gonna have a game where you just against a team you have no business losing to. It just happens. It's the way this goes. Virginia had been playing really good basketball, went to Blacksburg against a team in Virginia Tech that by every metric Virginia's better, and Virginia got rolled.
Well,
It's happened all year. How about what Kansas did to Houston at home? Kansas didn't miss a shot for 40 minutes.
I was going to say, how many top 10 teams have gone down on the road this year?
And Kansas went on the road. I think it was Texas. Was it Texas Tech or TCU? They went on the road and got whooped.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just look what happened. Look, Creighton's good, but look what Creighton did to the top-ranked team in the country last night at Creighton.
Yep.
You're just going to have days where it ain't happening. In a 30-plus game schedule, it's just reality. And South Carolina's had 2 games this year. You make free throws, you beat Georgia. Georgia's a quad 3 loss. You handle your business at the end against, right now it's a quad 3. Who knows where it could go. You hold on to your business against LSU in the last couple minutes, that's a win too. You've had 2 losses this year where you go, I should have won those 2. That's pretty good for a whole season, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
And the fact that in these close, tight games where you've had to make plays on both ends of the court to win, it took you this long to lose one of them.
Yeah. I think we knew they were going to cool off at some point and went on that winning streak that you went on. It all had to come to an end at some point. You certainly didn't want to follow that, 40-point loss to Auburn the other night with another loss to LSU, especially on your home court. And that was a game that South Carolina had well in hand by, 15 or 16 points there in the second half, where we just kind of assumed that they were going to cruise to victory there. And even in the waning minutes of that game, this is something that I brought up earlier, a big difference between last year's team and this year's team. We give them the benefit of the doubt now, because we know they're good enough, because we know they're not a flash in the pan. That win against Kentucky, was legit. So was the win against Tennessee and all the other wins there too, where even in the final couple minutes where it's a tight game against LSU, you just almost assumed they were going to find a way to win. Ultimately, they did not. And Jacoby Wright put up the 3 there at the end of the game that didn't end up falling. But, that this team has gotten so much better from a year ago, where now you can give them that benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, looking a little shaky here, but I think they're going to find a way to win.
Yeah, I think we talked about this for like a minute yesterday, and I'm with you, because we said yesterday, it's like, I did not think South Carolina was going to lose until they lost.
Right.
Earlier in the year, it was 180. Okay, they're going to lose. How are they going to lose? Or, well, they're only up 9 now with 3 minutes to go. Remember, what was it, the Kentucky game?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's waiting for, okay, when do you pull the Never did. Tennessee game. Okay, when's Tennessee getting back into this thing and taking control and doing what they do at home? Never did. And in so many games this year where South Carolina, when it's been like a 2-possession game late and they've got to make a play either on offense or defense, they make the play. So Saturday, I'm just sitting there watching this thing going, okay, they're going to make a play because they always make the play. When Cooper and Mack both hit the threes at the end, I'm like, oh, they're going to win.
Here it comes. Yeah.
They're going to win. And up until Mack got trapped in the corner and then LSU took the lead, I still said you got 5 seconds left. All you need is a bucket.
Sure. And
you'll win. The interesting part, and we didn't talk about this till just now, I just ran through my head, on that last play, when Wright takes a 3 from the corner, Colin Murray-Bowles slips and falls. I'm wondering, was that play drawn up to possibly get the ball? Because you're only down by 1. You don't need a 3.
Right.
I wonder if there was some type of action or some type of play they were running where Connor Murray-Bowles then cuts to the basket from the perimeter to where the option is to hit him. Because all you need is a bucket. You need a 2. You don't need a 3.
Right.
And I wonder, Murray-Bowles falling down, I wonder how much that screwed up that final play. Because he just got caught in the wash.
Mm-hmm.
And he just fell down for a minute. But when I rewatched it, I'm like, I wonder, was this play designed to come outside on the perimeter, but then have Murray-Bowles cut to the rack, and if he's available and open, you hit him for the high percentage shot that could be the win.
I was going to say, and if that ended up playing out that way, you feel pretty confident in saying that they probably would have gotten it. Then we're talking about a 65-64 win and say, oh, that was scary, but they found their way. So it's those small little things when you're playing a tight game like that end up being the difference. Now, and I know some people were complaining about the officiating, maybe not getting some of the calls. Here's the thing. You were a whole lot better than that LSU team. It shouldn't have been that close to where officiating came into the mix there, and that's one of those things that, again...
You were up 16, Tyler.
Exactly. You had it well in hand.
Yeah.
You let them chip away. All the bad calls in the world shouldn't, relinquish a lead like that against a team that you, on paper, are a whole lot better than.
But remember, and this is just us as fans, everywhere, all 50 states and Puerto Rico, blaming the officials makes you sleep better at night.
I guess.
Because it's like conspiracy theories.
Yeah, it's what passing the buck.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we were better, we just got screwed.
Yeah.
Instead of looking in the mirror and saying, okay, what did my favorite team do that didn't allow them to win the game? It's easy to say, oh, the ref screwed us because they didn't make this call, this call, this call, this call.
Right.
When you're up 16 points in the second half and the team you're playing is missing their leading scorer, their second leading scorer is in some type of foul trouble, you should win the game.
Right.
And by the way, I think LSU had 2 team fouls. South Carolina only had 3. So the game was getting called kind of loose in the second half anyway.
Yeah, it was fair on both sides.
So again, if you look, I don't tell people how to think. If you want to blame the officials, have at it. I always look at it this way.
It's too much of a crutch.
Yeah, it's low hanging fruit, right?
Sure.
I'll blame the officials. It's their reason my team lost. Okay, now I can go sleep. I feel better now.
Yeah.
I found someone to blame for my team losing. We all look. Fans do it. I used to do it a ton back when I was a crazy fan before I got medication and therapy.
Sure.
I was a big refs, officials. I went. They were always a reason in a lot of ways for my teams to lose. But then once I got therapy and clarity, I turned it to this. What did my favorite team not do to put the game in the hands of the officials?
Right.
Because when you put the game in the hands of the officials, Tyler,
You're subject to human error.
whatever happens, it's 50-50, babe. I will get back in here on the halftime show. Firehouse sub text the hour, 803-404-6100. We'll get to that next, and we'll see if the cool little sound machine works better now. We can play you some sound from either Mark Kingston or Sean Elliott from yesterday. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head, till 3 on the game. All right, time to knock off our Firehouse sub text of the hour at 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler Head?
Yeah, so going back to our earlier conversation at the beginning of the hour, I have Jess weighing in. He says, I was in air traffic control in the Navy for 20 years, worked in Pensacola. You aren't wrong. 18 inches apart. Side note, the front size of the Blue Angels paint scheme is sized to help them maintain spacing in a tight formation. So flying fighter jets 18 inches apart at like 400 miles an hour.
How crazy is that?
Insane.
That is insane. That's insane. We were joking earlier. We talk about NASCAR guys going 200.
Sure.
Blue Angel guys laugh.
Well, the crazy part is, and look, so they take off because the airport is on the back stretch. So you see them take off, and they just literally disappear across the ocean. They go that way while they're like, doing the invocation and stuff like that. And the goal is to fly over right at the end of the national anthem. And so you can see them start to kind of reappear in the distance. You know it's going to be loud, you know it's going to be fast, and they come zipping by you and they disappear behind the grandstands. Well, then they kind of do like a mini air show. So they're zipping around, coming from either side of the grandstand. They keep, it's called buzzing the tower.
Oh, yeah, buzzing the tower. I
They're
remember that from
literally
Top Gun.
Like 100 feet, 100 yards above the tower, going right overhead of you. And they're just coming from all directions. And, of course, airplanes are breaking the sound barrier.
Oh, sure.
So you'll see it, and then you'll just hear this boom right behind it. It was really like, it was pretty cool because they kept it up for a few minutes.
Again, I remember that because, Maverick buzzed the tower in the first Top Gun.
That's right.
And the coffee went all over the one officer.
I feel like you can reach out and touch them.
And you can't.
You can't. I wouldn't recommend it. Though, flying 18 inches apart, they could touch each other.
Yes,
I would not recommend it.
That's the most impressive part of the whole thing, right?
That's
it's
right.
not just going 400 miles an hour.
Right.
It's that you're within, a little bit over a foot of each other.
Think about the average person and our attention span when we're driving down the interstate, changing the radio station, drinking coffee, whatever it may be. The fact, like, if you're flying one of those things, how locked in and focused you have to be.
I know.
To not even, like, blink at the wrong time.
Yeah.
Insane.
Very insane. So thank you for the text about that. Firehouse Sub text on 803-404-6100. Going back to the men's basketball team really quick, just to give you an idea of where they're at. They dropped to 20 in the polls.
Yep.
Not a surprise. I figured it would be somewhere around there after 2 losses, one at home to a team you should have beat. And then, of course, you go to Auburn and everything just goes sideways. The net ranking of South Carolina at 58. 54 in the Ken Pom Analytic Efficiency Rankings. Right now, Bracketology has the Gamecocks at a 7 seed. They would play the 10th-seeded New Mexico Lobos.
Okay.
This is interesting. New Mexico, very efficient in the analytic world. They are at number 26. They're top 30 in efficiency in Ken Pom, and they're top 30-ish in offense and defense.
And that's what you kind of run into as you're getting to being one of these lower half seeds or somewhere, in that area is you may pull a mid-major team, but a very efficient mid-major team, one that, if they're not an AQ with their conference championship, one that's still pretty good, anyway, and you could run into a team like New Mexico.
Here's the interesting part of New Mexico. And again, we're just having fun with the bracketology. It doesn't mean you're going to play New Mexico, obviously. But New Mexico plays at one of the fastest paces in America. And South Carolina plays at one of the slowest paces in America. That would be an interesting dynamic. Most of the time, the team that plays slow wins the tempo battle.
Yeah.
Most of the time. But if you're a team that plays really fast, you can speed up that slow team, it becomes a track meet.
Right.
But that's just one interesting thing about the bracketology matchup for today by Joe Lunardi would be a really slow team against a really fast team. The team with the lowest net ranking to make the NCAA tournament, Rutgers last year at number 77. So South Carolina sitting at 58, still in a good spot. Your strength of schedule, by the way, is going to be good because you're playing nothing but quad one teams.
Right.
And teams are either in the NCAA tournament or on the bubble-ish of being in the NCAA tournament. And if you look at strength of schedule right now for South Carolina, again, remember that non-conference strength of schedule wasn't great. If you look at strength of schedule, I'm going to try to drop into it right now. Strength of schedule for South Carolina. It's gotten better. Right now it's at 96. And the reason it is because the non-conference strength of schedule was 333.
Right.
So that's what hurts the strength of schedule. The strength of schedule in conference obviously is very good. Because when you look at, I'm just looking at Ken Palm, you've got Auburn, Alabama, and Tennessee all in the top 10. You've played all three. So you have that going for you. Also, you have Mississippi State in the top 30. You have Florida in the top 30, who you're going to play. Texas A&M is in the top 50 in Ken Palm as well. There are a lot. Kentucky is in the top 25. It's your non-conference strength of schedule that's hurt your overall strength of schedule for South Carolina. But right now, the Gamecocks are sitting in a solid spot. Again, go 3-2, 2-3-ish, whatever down the stretch. You're in the dance, and you'll hear your name on Selection Sunday. I will get back in here on the halftime show, 1 o'clock hour, football. We'll hear from Sean Elliott, some cuts maybe you didn't hear yesterday here on the game, coming up next. Oh, halftime show. Terry Ford and Tyler Head. We roll till 3 here on the game. Of course, 1 o'clock hour. Football, 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 and more football. Here on the game, brought to you by, or sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors. Sean Elliott yesterday reintroduced to the media by Shane Beamer. Of course, Elliott coming back from being the head coach at Georgia State to being the run game coordinator / tight ends coach here at South Carolina. And Sean met with the media yesterday. One interesting cut. I don't know if we played this one, but cut 7, Tyler. Sean Elliott talking about what his role will be in Dow Loggins' offense as the run game coordinator. Hit it.
Yeah, well, I've only been in the meetings here now. This is just my second day. We're going to sit down, we're going to talk, and we're going to see where the deficiencies are in the run game here and see what we can do to improve them. If it means adding a couple of things, adding the run game to our personnel that fits the best, then we'll probably do some of that. But as we sit here today, we have not sat down specifically and talked exactly how we're going to do that.
So, again, how much involved is Sean Elliott as the run game coordinator? Now, there's many ways to look at this. The offensive coordinator is Dow Loggins.
Yep.
He builds the system of offense for the passing game and the run game. He does them both. His playbook is filled with pass plays, run plays. So is Sean Elliott coming in and is basically Dow Loggins saying, okay, here's what we do in the run game. You were a former offensive line coach. Help me out with how we maybe run the blocking schemes, what we're going to do. Maybe we can incorporate some ideas you have of how to block this stuff. Is that what you're going to do? Because, again, it's Dow's playbook. Is that what run game coordinator is going to mean? Because it means different things at different schools for different coaching staffs.
Sure.
Or is Sean Elliott going to come in and really say, okay, here's the run game that I've always been a part of that worked really well. I think it fits the offensive linemen and the backs we have here. Now you take it and make it yours and how you want to use it. I don't know how they're going to do it.
I think
no idea.
I think it's probably somewhere in the middle, a little bit of both. Maybe certain things you lean more towards one side or the other. But Dow Loggins, I feel like was pretty positively received as the offensive coordinator this past season. The numbers weren't at what people were hoping for, particularly the rushing numbers were once again at the bottom of the SEC. So it's okay. Well, I have an idea of how I like to do things from a running back perspective, but again, the offensive line certainly needs to help that out. What can Sean Elliott bring from his experience, not only as a head coach, but formerly here at South Carolina with the success they had with guys like Marcus Lattimore and saying, okay, well, here's what worked for me. And again, the game's changed a lot since then, so maybe not all those concepts work necessarily, but saying, okay, here's what we can try, here's what we can do, and kind of go off of what Dow Loggins sees. And again, Loggins has a very different perspective on calling plays than a lot of offensive coordinators because he spent so much time in the NFL. So does he have a different idea that maybe Sean Elliott's not thought of or not looked at from the same way? So again, it's a lot of collaboration. These two guys have the entire offseason to work out those kinks, and we'll really see what it looks like when Old Dominion comes to town in August.
Right. I feel like that experience with the offense, being an offensive line coach, kind of folds into the whole run game coordinator thing, probably with the idea of, okay, how do we block this better? Or do we do something different in blocking it? And then, of course, you have Lonnie Teasley, who last time I checked is the offensive line coach.
Right.
It's I touched this a little bit yesterday. This is a very interesting coaching staff. I like what Shane Beamer has done to fill his openings because, again, 3 guys left. You had one guy moved on that you let go, but 3 guys left for other gigs. You brought in people who are ex-offensive coordinators, an ex-head coach, and now they're all in different roles. Blackwell, the running back coach, was an offensive coordinator for, I think, 1 year at South Florida. He's a running back coach. He's not an offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
James Coley's been an offensive coordinator before, I believe at Georgia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Correct?
Georgia, Miami, Florida State. He's been around.
He was an OC in more than one spot.
Yeah.
And now he's a wide receivers coach, but he's not an offensive coordinator.
Right.
Sean Elliott was a head coach. He's not a head coach. Joe D was a special teams coach in the NFL for a long time.
Yep.
If everybody can collaborate this in the right way, this could be really good. But the key here is for everybody. I don't know if leave your ego at the door is the right way to say it, but leave your ego at the door. I can't think of a better way to say it.
And that's a really good way to put it. And I do think, Beamer now being 3 years in as a head coach in the SEC or just a head coach in general, understanding a little bit more of what you need to be successful, maybe looking at some other coaching staffs around the SEC saying, wow, Georgia's got this much experience, Alabama had this much experience, all that kind of stuff, and trying to create something in a very similar mold. But that is a good point that you have to bring up when you're talking about guys that have called plays, guys who have been head coaches, all having to answer effectively to Dow Loggins at the end of the day when it comes to what plays are ultimately going to be called. That can be interesting, and depending on the size of the ego, could be a little bit of a power struggle when one guy thinks he's right and the other guy doesn't necessarily like his concept. So again, that's something that has to be worked out in the offseason. I don't think that's going to be an issue necessarily, but I've just kind of looked at it from the standpoint of having so many great minds, specifically when it comes to offense, all being in the same room, just to have more ideas, more, hey, I've been in this situation, here's what we did, I had this type of player, we did this with him, and all that kind of stuff, to where, maybe the room that they had a year ago, not to say that, Ontario Hardesty and Justin Stepp and stuff like that weren't experienced and didn't have their own things they could bring to the table, but it's different when you're talking about guys that have been coordinators and guys that have been head coaches in the past that just have more of that game experience that they can, again, bring into that room.
Yeah, because it's like, my thought was, like Sean Elliott is a former offensive line coach.
Yeah.
And he's out there, they're out there on the practice field, and they're scrimmaging or they're running some stuff, and he's over there, an offensive lineman, maybe missteps this way or that way, or techniques off or wherever. Does Sean Elliott then walk over to Lonnie Teasley and say, hey, bro, I just noticed something?
Right.
Is Sean Elliott just going to jump in and say something? And Lonnie Teasley might be sitting there going, excuse me.
Well,
I mean, I think everybody's got to figure out boundaries and the perimeters and parameters and all that stuff.
You can't end up coaching a position that's not yours.
Right.
Constructive criticism, ideas, that kind of stuff. But if you're over there blowing the whistle for the, for the drills and stuff like that, that's maybe pushing the limit a little bit.
Because again, I think look, and I don't know. I'm guessing before, Shane goes out and hires a James Coley or Blackwell, the running back coach, or maybe even Sean Elliott. I'm guessing you go, hey, Dow, you going to be okay with this?
Yeah.
Because now you've got a former head coach and two former offensive coordinators on your offensive staff, and you're the guy in charge.
Yeah. Well.
And I think, look, Dow is my conversations, and Jay and I have talked to Dow a few times. I think Dow is confident enough in what he's doing and himself and his abilities that he doesn't mind having other guys who have done the job in the room with him.
Right.
But it's just out of professional courtesy. If you're Shane, I think you do go to Dow Loggins and go, look, I got a chance to hire this guy. He was a former offensive coordinator.
Yep. Now
he's this or that. Are you cool? And Dow probably said, hire the best people, man. I don't care. And let's go.
And I think every coaching staff welcomes in a guy that is as intense as Sean Elliott is, because, and look, every coach is, hard and all that kind of stuff, but Sean Elliott seems like a different kind of cat that when you bring him into the room, whether he's, again, coaching tight ends or helping out on the offensive line, whatever it may be, he brings a certain level of intensity that I think is welcome no matter where you're at.
That guy's headbutting dudes with helmets on.
It's the old Eric Russell approach.
Yeah, I was kidding with Chris and Wes yesterday. I'm like, there are things in my life I think I've been intense about. I don't think I've ever been so intense over anything that I decided to headbutt someone else wearing a helmet. I give Sean Elliott credit, man. That's a whole new level of intensity. That maybe they need that, and maybe Shane looked at that too. That they need a juice guy, so to speak, a guy that's going to bring that. Before a game, he's out there headbutting cats, or who are getting ready.
Right.
Maybe they need a guy that's going to be that on all the time, and in a good way.
Sure.
That he's going to bring that intensity every day. If somebody's dragging a little bit, bring the juice, man. Let's go, Sean.
And, sometimes those coaches can rub players the wrong way, but I'll go off the responses that we saw from past and current players of Sean Elliott, the response to him getting this job, he seems to be pretty well liked by the players that he's worked with in the past. So I don't think it's one of those guys that you're worried about ostracizing some of your players or making them, not love the coaching staff or something like that. I just think he brings a level of intensity that not everybody can, and again, it seems to really resonate with the players.
I think when you're bringing it from a positive, that's the difference.
Yeah.
Like, if you are the juice guy, so to speak, if you're intense on steroids, but it's from a positive of, hey, let's go win, let's go tear it up, let's go be physical, let's go get jacked up and geeked up because you can do this, we can do whatever. That comes from I think that's where even a guy like that who is so, I mean, you've seen it on social media like I have. It's like, wow, my man is geeked. But when it comes from that, I'm trying to make you better. I'm trying to make us better.
Yeah.
I want you to be the best you can be. I'm here so you can get to that level of intensity you need to have to go out there and win. I think that's why you take it differently and you like it. Now, again, at Maryland during the DJ Durkin era, when you're throwing dumbbells at players, that's the wrong intensity.
Sure.
So I think it's how you channel your intensity. And it feels like Sean Elliott channels it in the correct manner.
I just had the thought of Sean Elliott and Dan Campbell as an old school wrestling tag team.
Oh, that'd be good.
The knee biters.
Oh, I like that. Very nice.
Yeah,
would they be good guys or heels?
Oh, they'd definitely be heels.
Absolutely.
There's no, none of these flips, none of these high flying moves. They're just going to beat the crap out of you.
Oh, yeah, they're just going to grab you, bounce your head off the turnbuckle, and then just slam you. And by the way, they're also going to do awful things to you while the others got the referee's attention.
That's right.
The way it should be.
So, and somehow the referee never turns his back and sees it.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah, it's weird.
It's bizarre.
No
Now
matter how much the fans in the front row are pleading,
look.
he just is oblivious.
While Elliott's got the referee's attention, Campbell's just biting off kneecaps.
Exactly.
Puh, puh.
They would make a great team.
That would be good. One other Sean Elliott here real quick. Let's get cut 6, Tyler. When he knew he was coming back to South Carolina.
Oh, yeah. When did I know? It was very quick. It was very quick. Coach Beamer, maybe Wednesday night or Tuesday night. It was a Tuesday night phone call and another phone call on Wednesday morning, and then that was it. Like I said, I'd always keep up with the University of South Carolina from afar, and when positions would come available, I would kind of see what they were. But like I said, it happened very quickly, and I think Tuesday night and Wednesday morning was when I knew.
And then Sean Elliott left Georgia State and showed up here to be the run game coordinator and tight ends coach. And we talked about this when it first happened, last week, is just this is going to continue to happen. I don't know how much, but it's going to happen. Guys are going to be like, in this new world, being a head coach, I think I'm going to pass for right now.
And look, and I don't know how many other programs or jobs had reached out to Sean Elliott in the past couple of years, spent 7 years at Georgia State, but this was literally the perfect scenario for him. His family lived here. For all accounts, he was driving back and forth all the time while trying to coach at Georgia State. So this just made the most sense in the world. Again, he kept up with things, kind of waiting for seeing what would become available. Maybe was he hoping for a coordinator position or something else? I don't know, but decided taking the tight end coach job. Yes, he's technically taking a little bit less money, but think about the amount of gas he burns between here and Atlanta, making all those trips. That'll at least save him some dough there. And again, the being a coach, no matter if you're a head coach or position coach, whatever it is stressful enough. Being able to actually be around your family and live with them instead of making those back and forth trips and living in a condo in Atlanta, I'm sure is something that he's looking forward to.
It's a perfect storm of getting back to your family and maybe getting away from a situation you felt that you were in a no-win situation with the new world order of college football.
Right.
All right, we'll get back in here. Football. Let's switch it over to the NFL real quick. Chicago Bears are on the clock. What are they going to do? We'll get into that on the halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the game.
Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Terry Ford along with you on this Wednesday afternoon. Football in the 1 o'clock hour. Heard a lot from Sean Elliott there in that last clip, or in that last segment, excuse me, as he's obviously formally been welcomed as the tight ends coach and the running game coordinator for South Carolina. A lot of conversation will be had about him in the offseason, and then ultimately when the season finally starts in August, we'll finally get to see all that come to fruition.
Like I said, I like what they've done, having to replace the coaches they replaced. It's a very interesting mix of coaches, and this thing could be really good with all that experience of guys who have done a variety of jobs. It could be great if everybody just
we will
rows the boat together.
We'll maintain optimism until we see otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think, again, I like the combination of all the experience. You've had a bunch of guys in there who've been offensive coordinators who understand what Dow Loggins is doing and what he's going through and how he has to put together all the things he has to put together, and they can, give input to Dow Loggins on. Oh, I never thought about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
As long as you have a true pecking order of how you do your process, that coaching room could be really, really, really good.
And,
there's no doubt.
Dow Loggins never said this specifically, but he did comment quite a bit going into last season about the differences between calling plays and the NFL and calling plays in college with the spacing and the hash marks and all that kind of stuff. So, to my knowledge, there was nobody on the staff last year that had ever called plays before from an offensive coordinator standpoint. So, and again, look, guys like Stepp and Hardesty, they'd been around the game and obviously understood the ins and outs, but being able to have multiple people underneath you working with you saying, hey, I called plays at Miami, Georgia, I've been a head coach here, that kind of stuff, being able to say, hey, here's something you can think about. Here's something you can look at. We tried this here and we tried this there. It just opens up your idea book a little bit more, saying, never thought about that. And again, for somebody that has not been in the college game as a coordinator specifically, for very long, I think that's only beneficial to them.
Yeah, I mean, you went from having no one in there but you to having two other guys who have called plays.
Right. And again, that's not to say that everybody's, just going to start handing them plays at the beginning of every week saying, we need to run this, we need to run that, we need to run that. Like, at the end of the day, he's still the one that gets to make the decision. It's still his playbook. But having that input saying, hey, I got this guy here that can do this and that, and let's try this. Maybe.
Or the idea you're Dow Loggins, you can look at James Coley and say, hey, here's what's running through my head. Now, you OC'd, tell me what you think of this.
Yeah.
And Coley can go, okay, I like that, and blah, blah, blah. Or have you ever thought about maybe this, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's the positive way that it all goes. So, and again, I think you have a wealth of knowledge now in your coaching room. So we'll get more into that. We got plenty of time to talk about it.
That's right.
Football, sponsored by Atlantic Windows and Doors here on the game in the 1 o'clock hour on the halftime show. The Chicago Bears have a very interesting, not dilemma, because it's good. It's not a dilemma. It's great. You got a choice. Either you stay at the number 1 pick overall and take Caleb Williams, quarterback from Southern Cal, and you trade Justin Fields for, you're not going to get anything better than a second-round pick if you can get that.
Sure.
Or you keep Justin Fields because you like what you saw after he came back from injury last year. You trade down and you snag Marvin Harrison Jr. and you get draft capital. Or trade down lower to get draft capital, and there's a bevy of receivers on the board this year. It's a very receiver-deep draft.
Right.
You have to make that choice. Now, this is me. If I'm sitting in the Chicago Bear war room, I'm taking Caleb Williams. And really, there's a bunch of reasons for it. One, did Justin Fields get better when he came back from the injury? Yeah. Did he get wow better? No, he got better. There are things that Justin Fields, if you hear scouts who have scouted against the Bears and film people who break down film, one of the consistent things you hear is Justin Fields has a tough time finding the open man at times, a tough time reading the field.
Right.
That is a ginormous red flag. I mean, a ginormous red flag. Yes, he can make plays with his legs. Yes, there are times he can make some spectacular throws. He's got an NFL arm. He has gotten better. But if you miss wide open receivers on a consistent basis, you're just not going to get to the level of quarterback that your team needs you to get to. Now, if you want to say, well, Terry, he can get better. Okay, possibly he could. I'm not saying he can't. But here's the other problem. Do you know what's happening soon, Tyler? You have to pay him.
That's right. And God, he's been in the league for 3-4 years now.
You've got to now make a decision on his fifth-year option.
Well, and that's the thing is he can get better, but we typically see guys make sizable jumps early on in their career. Like that year 1 to year 2 jump, usually pretty big. Sometimes even year 2 to year 3. Was he going into year 4, 5, something like that? You usually don't see monumental leaps in improvement once you start getting later on in your career. And again, Justin Fields has all the athletic talent in the world, and they certainly try and utilize that with his feet in that offense. But yeah, the throwing is just not where it needs to be, and I don't think he's going to get that much better all of a sudden to where it's justifiable to say, hey, let's invest however many millions of dollars in him to be the future of this team for the next 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, because I believe you're going into year 4, you got to make a decision on the fifth-year option.
Yeah,
and then it's pay time. And I don't think Justin Fields has shown you enough as a thrower to where you feel comfortable passing up on what could be a generational player in Caleb Williams. Like, Caleb Williams not be a generational player? Sure. But a lot of people think he's the highest-rated quarterback prospect since Neckbeard.
Yeah.
So when you're talking Andrew Luck territory, and Andrew Luck was really good before the injuries. Let's not minimize how good Andrew Luck was.
Yeah.
And if you want to make the argument that Justin Fields, they haven't put a lot around him, I won't disagree with you. I mean, but they did bring in DJ Moore last year. DJ Moore had a really good season.
True.
Part of that was, Justin Fields had a part of that, but also DJ Moore did help Justin Fields by giving him a real target. But my pushback on that is, I agree with you. That's a Bears problem. But I go back to what Justin Fields can control is being able to read the field. You can't control the wide receivers you're given. You can't control the offensive line. You can't control the playbook, the offensive system, the play calls, but you can control you being able to read the field. And the talk of him missing open receivers on a consistent basis, that's tough, man. If I got to make a decision about moving forward with a guy and passing up on a talent like Caleb Williams, I've got to feel more confident about Justin Fields moving forward.
Sure.
And me personally, from all the stuff that I've read and seen, I've watched a little bit of his All-22, and I'm punting on Justin Fields, and I'm going to draft Caleb Williams if I'm the Bears. I just am. Because we saw when you see it, you understand the difference, like what C.J. Stroud did last year. And did the Texans help him by giving him a solid offensive line? Yes. By giving him a really good offensive coordinator who understands the modern game? Yes. He had a plethora of guys to throw to? Yes. But again, those wide receivers weren't all world coming into the year, so part of that was C.J. Stroud also helping out his receivers.
Right.
You saw the difference in the Houston Texans by putting in what they think is a future franchise quarterback. That's a difference a future franchise quarterback can make. Look what Joe Burrow did in Cincinnati.
Yep.
Guess who's not a punchline anymore?
Cincinnati.
I don't think Justin Fields is that guy. From what I've seen, you got to make a decision now. The decision is here, and you got to look at your evidence. How confident do you feel to pass on Caleb Williams, trade down, draft a wide receiver, and run with Justin Fields? Personally, I wouldn't feel confident enough to do it. I would trade Fields and get what I can get, and I would draft Caleb Williams. That would be me. Just because it's a perfect storm, and you got to make a decision, I'd make that. If it was me, that's a decision I would make. We'll see what the Bears do. All right, we'll get back in here. Speaking of first-round picks overall, Bryce Young, national radio guy / TV guy, had a Bryce Young take. And this is the door you open when you go through what the Panthers went through last year. We'll run it to you next. Halftime show, Terry Ford, Tyler Head on the Game.
Halftime show, Tyler Head and Terry Ford along with you on this Wednesday morning. Continue on the 1 o'clock hour of football. We talked a little bit that last segment about the Bears and their conundrum with what to do about Justin Fields going forward here. There's a lot of conversation around not only what's going to happen with the number one pick this year, but also conversation around it's going to happen with the number one pick from a season ago. Obviously, the Carolina Panthers traded up to get themselves to that number one spot that the Chicago Bears had previously occupied, which in turn actually meant that the Chicago Bears now have a number one pick themselves this season, which ends up working out well. But the Panthers still yet to figure out how exactly the Bryce Young era is going to go.
So that folds into Bryce Young, and Craig Carton is on Fox Sports 1, longtime radio host in New York City. Now it's a national platform. Never been a big fan of Bryce Young, and Craig Carton doubled down on his lack of being a fan of Bryce Young recently.
He is not an NFL quarterback. He will never have great success in the NFL, and he was one of the worst picks a team has ever made in the history of the NFL while picking number one. Wow. He's not a quarterback. I'm sorry that you guys don't want to see it that way. He is not an NFL quarterback, and he never, ever will be. I've said a lot of things in my 32 years.
You're wrong.
I've never been more right about this.
You're wrong about this.
Never been more right. And again, I want to be clear. It ain't a knock on the kid.
It is.
It's a reality that you cannot be an Oompa Loompa and be successful in the NFL.
I didn't know he was an Oompa Loompa. Did you know that?
I've never heard it referred to that way.
I mean, I've seen that movie.
I have too.
I never knew he was in it.
I never looked at one of those guys and thought NFL quarterback.
Absolutely.
or anything for that matter, right, relating to being a professional athlete.
And the point is not to break down what Craig Carton said. It's his opinion, and it's fine. I would love to, besides, so he's just basically saying Bryce Young's height will stop him from being a good NFL quarterback, right?
I think that's a lazy argument to make, especially in today's NFL.
And again, I think it's a little low-hanging fruit of saying that, especially when you see Kyler Murray with some type of success so far. I mean, has Kyler Murray been what they were hoping he would be in Arizona? Not yet.
No.
But he has continued to be the starting quarterback of the Cardinals. There's been some levels of success, but there's been inconsistency. Russell Wilson, last time I checked, is under 6 feet tall. Has a pretty good career.
Yeah.
Has got a Super Bowl ring and is quarterback the Seahawks in 2 Super Bowls and has put up some really good NFL numbers.
The past 10 years, there's been a seismic shift in the narrative around quarterbacks because for the longest time, if you were under 6'3", 6'4", you're not really going to get a sniff at the NFL. Maybe you can come in and be a third stringer or another arm in camp or something like that. But the way the game has changed and kind of adopted more of what college offenses are doing, they've allowed, some of these shorter guys, Baker Mayfield's like, 6'1" on a good day type things.
In
to be
heels.
Able to, exactly, to be able to come in and thrive in the NFL. And again, Kyler Murray being the biggest example of really short quarterback that has had varying degrees of success depending on who you ask, but he's still been able to hang around the league.
There's a guy that wasn't very tall named Drew Brees.
That also worked out pretty well.
Worked out pretty well. So I think that is a very low-hanging fruit argument, and I don't agree with it anymore. But again, that's his opinion. That's fine. The reason I play that is not so much to argue with Craig Carton, because again, that's his opinion. It's fine. Again, I just don't agree with it, and I think it's a very low-hanging fruit, easy thing to say without context.
Right.
He did say also in the riff about comparing Bryce Young to David Meggett, which I thought was really funny because David Meggett was a 5'7" scat back that played for the Giants. It was a return man and was really a really good receiver out of the backfield and blah, blah, blah. Nothing to which Bryce Young is. I guess he was just comparing the height of Bryce Young to David Meggett, which, again, don't understand.
Right.
But here's the problem. Again, these it's not just Craig Carton. There's a narrative around the league that the reason Bryce Young wasn't successful, I shouldn't say the league, the media, Bryce Young's too short to be successful.
Right.
That's not the reason why he was not successful last year.
How many pieces did he have around him?
None. And that's why he wasn't successful. Again, if Bryce Young would have been put in a spot where the offensive line, which, to be fair, a lot of people liked the Panther offensive line going into the season, it totally cratered. That offensive line was a mess. There was injuries, ineffectiveness. Guys who were supposed to step forward didn't. Guys who were supposed to be good weren't. It was crazy.
Right.
You thought, and again, I don't understand this. You truly thought what you did in the wide receiver position was enough.
With over the hill Adam Thielen.
I mean, Adam Thielen if he's your third best receiver, good, right?
Sure.
You put him in the slot, and Adam Thielen last year had some of the best, when you throw it to him, he caught it numbers in the league. He's not a guy that drops it. Here's the problem. Adam Thielen has a problem with separation now at his age. He can't get open like he used to. So he's not a guy that's going to go out there and make big plays, because you know what's tough to do, Tyler? Make big plays when you're covered. But when Thielen did get open, they threw it to him, he caught it. But he's not a number one receiver. He's really not even a number two now.
Right.
And he was your best receiver. Jonathan Mingo, the rookie, was one of the worst graded wide receivers in the NFL last year. Hayden Hurst was injured. There was just a lot of stuff that went on last year.
It also didn't help. He was running for his life. The offensive line was garbage.
So offensive line's terrible. Like you said, running for your life. Looking for a receiver that's open. Guess what? They're not. This has nothing to do with his height. And that's why it's a lazy take and lazy narrative.
And when your owner decides to fire your coach halfway through the season, the guy that was in charge of developing the quarterback.
And by the way, it didn't seem like he put an offense in that helped the quarterback either.
Right.
Because you got to build an offense around your quarterback skills. And wow.
Here's the thing, and this really mainly happens with quarterbacks, and occasionally you'll have, a defensive end or somebody that gets drafted number one overall, but we are so quick to want to make a judgment on what this person's career is after a year, even after 2 years, where again, the farther you get into career, the less and less your development's going to change. But after 1 year in a less than ideal situation with a dumpster fire of an organization like Carolina, I don't think you can write Bryce Young off. If you took him right now and plopped him into insert whatever moderately successful organization, I think he'd be a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you put him with Matt LaFleur in Green Bay.
Sure, think he could be doing what Jordan Love's done.
Right. I think that to say Bryce Young hasn't been successful because of his height, you're just not paying attention, or you're just being lazy and making some take because in the beginning you said he wasn't going to be good because of his height.
Sure.
So you're going to double down on it and say, see, I told you. But no, I feel like with Bryce Young, either A, get him the heck out of Carolina, which won't happen. But by year 3, if David Canales can actually be a good head coach and a good developer of Bryce Young, let's see where Bryce Young is after year 3. I think that's fair. Obviously, does he have to get better in year 2 from this disaster of year 1? Yes.
Right.
But to me, by the end of year 3, you should be able to make a case of, is Bryce Young what you were hoping he was going to be, or is he not going to be? I think that's that's boring. It's not a hot take. It won't get me on FS1. But to me, that's the fair, objective way to look at Bryce Young, because year 1 told you nothing.
Right.
And where these guys land is so important. It really is. If you land in a bleep show like Carolina, it's going to be tough to succeed. If you land with the Jets, we've seen rookie quarterbacks' careers go to die in New York. You land in D.C. with what that was for such a long time. Certain organizations, you have no chance. And Carolina, unfortunately, is one of them. Now, hopefully that's going to change now. Do I have, on a scale of 1 to 10, my confidence level of that changing? -5. Right. I feel bad for Bryce Young. I really do. But it's not because he's short last year. It had nothing to do with it. All right, halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head will come back. Firehouse Sub, text of the hour, 803-404-6100. That is next here on The Game. Time to check our Firehouse subtext of the hour, 803-404-6100 here on the Game halftime show. Terry Ford, Tyler Head. What do you got, man?
More people weighing in on our Daytona conversation from earlier. Nameless texter says, Daytona Bike Week is unlike anything I've ever seen. I was there on spring break and we stumbled upon Bike Week. My goodness.
My goodness.
That my goodness is probably encompassing a lot of things we probably couldn't talk about on here.
No, my goodness is a nice way to describe it. Could you say stumbling on Bike Week and you didn't even realize what you were stumbling on into? Wow. Wow. Very nice.
It's like Mardi Gras on wheels.
Hey, yes. I'm going to tell you, man, I never got to go to Mardi Gras. I've been to New Orleans a bunch. New Orleans on a Sunday afternoon is one of the craziest places in the world to begin with, just a random Sunday afternoon.
Right.
So I would hate to see what Mardi Gras is when a normal I lived in Biloxi for a year.
Okay.
And I had a buddy of mine had season tickets for the Saints. And I go with him to Saints games in the Superdome. And then we go over the quarter. Oh, wow. Just, my goodness.
For the beignets, right?
My goodness. Yes, just for the beignets. Wow. The things you can accomplish if you carry beads around with you. That's all I'm going to say. But, yeah, Biker Week at Daytona. Oh, my goodness is a great. That should be a T-shirt. Biker Week at Daytona.
My goodness.
My goodness.
Well, if you have the time, it's like 2 weeks away. So,
I remember when I was younger. Now it doesn't matter. When I was younger, there were two places I wanted to go to really bad, but I was scared, A, what I would do when I got there, and B, I wouldn't come back. And that was Vegas and Amsterdam. When I was younger, I'm like, man, I want to go to Vegas so bad. But if I go to Vegas, God knows what I'm going to do. And two, I might not come back. Because I might get there and go, no, I'm not leaving. I said that with Amsterdam. Years ago, I had a buddy of mine went to Amsterdam. And he was gone a long time.
yeah.
And he came back and said, man, you were gone a long time. He goes, let me tell you about Amsterdam. And I said, when are you going back again? I'll go with you. But those are two places I think. Whatever happened to Terry? He said he would go take a 2-week visit to Amsterdam. How long was that? It was 10 years ago. But now that I'm older, I don't care about either one. About going, I'd come back because I got things I got to take care of. But when I was younger, I'm like, I'll never come back.
It's kind of one of those things like you'd go, but you'd still be in bed by like 10:30.
Oh yeah. Be like, this Amsterdam's a lot of fun. I got to go to bed. It's about 9:30. I'm getting a little tired. Thanks though. Or Vegas. Oh, yeah. I'm sleepy. Be in my room at 10. But
It's called maturing.
or it's called can't stay awake.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it's a nice way to put it by you, though. Thank you for the text. It's a fabulous text. Well, I think we found a T-shirt. 803-404-6100. All right, Charlie Baker is the new Grand Poobah of the NCAA, or the new Muppet, put in the president's office at the NCAA for the people who have the real power to move his arms and mouth and feet with the strings. Charlie Baker, wide-ranging interview with ESPN. Old Charlie talked about his thoughts on coaches who are upset about the ultimate lack of any kind of transfer rules today. And here's what Charlie Baker thinks of those coaches who are upset with this phenomenon that really makes keeping roster integrity very difficult.
I'm not much on that. Do they transfer more than they did 10 years ago? Yes. Do they transfer more than their peers who aren't student athletes? No. One of the things I hear from kids when I talk to them about this issue is coaches walk out on their contracts. What about us?
Well, again, I don't know if that's the ultimate way to look at it if you're Charlie Baker, but a couple things about this. It's not so much, to me, it's making the calendar make sense.
Sure.
And you have coaches want to go back to the old days. No, the old days aren't happening with transfers. And I was totally against all that stuff in the old days anyway, where a coach could tell you where you could transfer and couldn't. That was crap.
Sure.
Is the wild, wild west of today where, let's be honest, there is going to be unlimited transfers? Is that going to be crazy? Sure it is. It absolutely is going to be crazy. But again, that's why you have to get everybody together to make the rules. And Charlie Baker said something I thought was very interesting. In this interview, he said there really isn't a path forward for the NCAA to solve its current legal issues in a sustainable way without some intervention from federal lawmakers.
Good luck with that.
Good luck, Charlie, because as we speak, none of the so-called bills have reached a committee vote.
And, you know, it's an election year, so that level of priority is going to continue to fall further and further down for them.
And once again, you hired a man to run the NCAA whose only reason you hired him is to go and meet with his contacts and buddies on Capitol Hill to get the NCAA some help from the federal lawmakers. It's the only reason Charlie Baker was hired, not to be mean.
Pretty much.
That's it. So no wonder he doesn't understand anything about the calendar for coaches. Halftime show, trending's coming up. All right. You need to redo what's going on in your home with your video, your audio, your sound system, your TVs, your setup. Maybe you want to put something outside where you can go sit outside on your lawn furniture and watch Hulu. You call 803-948-8328. That is Integrated Media. I saw some pictures on their on their Facebook of Sonos speakers that they have put in, surround sound systems from Sonos, Sonos Beam, mini subwoofers, 6-inch wall speakers, just the Sonos, the whole setup. It's phenomenal. And that could be at your house. If you want the ultimate sound when you're watching TV, you're checking out a movie, whatever it is, you're watching a sporting event, and you want the best sound possible, Sonos is the way to go. Integrated Media, within your budget and within what you want to do, will come and set up in your house, indoor, outdoor, does not matter. The outdoor ones, by the way, weatherproof. That's Integrated Media, 803-948-8328.
is a drive to left field. Lee Croy got every last drop of that one, and it is out of here. Talmadge Lee Croy, who only hit 4 home runs all of last season, has his first of the year, and the Gamecocks lead at 6-2.
Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler had Terry Ford along with you. It is 2 o'clock time for what is trending at 2, and we'll start off with Gamecock baseball, and that was the call last night on the Gamecocks radio network. Derek Scott with Talmadge Lee Croy launching the home run for one of the 12 runs that the Gamecocks scored en route to the 12-2 run rule victory over Winthrop last night out at Founders Park to improve to 4-0 on the season. Lee Croy off to a solid start this year through 4 games, sitting, he's gone 5 of 11 with 2 RBIs in that home run through 4 games, so far to start the season, as Scott mentioned right there. Something that he didn't do a whole lot of last year, hitting home runs. So good to see him get one early this season. Offensively, this is a team that kind of picked up right where they left off, which we expected them to. Monty Lee in year 1 in 2023 really elevated an area that had struggled the year prior and turned them into a lot of a power hitting team, led by guys like Ethan Petrie and Cole Messina, and it seems to be staying on that exact right track. Now, again, you take it with a grain of salt to a degree because of the quality of opponent that you're playing with, Miami of Ohio and Winthrop and tonight Queens. These are teams that you should be beating by 10 runs, and these are teams that you should be run ruling and stuff like that. So we'll get a good litmus test coming up at the end of next week when the Gamecocks end up taking on Clemson. Clemson's one of the best teams nationally, top 25 team, and we'll kind of see where this Gamecock team is at before starting SEC play a couple weeks later, taking on Ole Miss. But again, the offense firing on all cylinders, and that's really highlighted by a couple of transfers. You had Blake Jackson coming in from UNC Greensboro, off to a really fantastic start, went 2 for 2 again last night with a couple of RBIs, and he's kind of giving that ability of being a true leadoff type hitter, which is something that South Carolina really needed coming into the season. Somebody that can get you on base, that can get on base for you, and steal a few bags as well. 2 for 2 on steals so far this season, and Tyler Causey as well, the transfer in from North Carolina, performed well playing in that DH spot. Those 2 guys combined are actually top 3 as far as the guys that have played in all 3 games so far in overall average, OPS, overall hits, and RBIs. So a couple good transfers to starting things off really, really well for the Gamecocks this season. Last night, and it'll be kind of the same degree tonight because it is Queens, but Coach Kingston was asked yesterday how much you can truly gauge off of these first handful of games when you haven't necessarily played the top level competition just yet.
A lot more than 4 games, I can tell you that. But you can see trends. You can see which guys have really made nice improvements. Lee Croy is the first guy that hops off the page. His improvement has continued to go in a great direction. Ethan Petrie, he's pushing it a little bit right now, but he'll be just fine. We know that. Blake Jackson's been a great addition. We know Parker Nolan's going to be a really good player. There's a lot of guys that are playing extremely well. I'll put Dylan Brewer on that list of a guy that's really made great improvements, and that's great to see. So, again, I think we're seeing a lot of positives right now.
Yeah, a lot of positives. And again, you don't put everything into what you've seen through the first 4 games against this type of competition, but some good trends, certainly. And kind of funny, one thing we knew about Ethan Petrie a season ago, it seemed like he was either hitting a home run or striking out, and that seems to kind of been the case so far this season, his 2 hits being those 2 home runs so far through the first a handful of games. And some of these other guys, as as Coach mentioned there, Brewer off to a really good start, had a really great performance over the weekend, against Miami of Ohio, another good one last night, going 3 of 5 for 1 RBI. But my biggest thing is just kind of looking at this pitching situation, which is something that we knew was the bigger question mark coming into the season as opposed to what it was a season ago, where it ended up being a problem with injuries and everything like that. And I think you got really good starts out of Eli Jones, Dylan Eskew, as well as Roman Kimball. Of course, Roman Kimball's start was the beginning of the team no-hitter from Sunday. And, he was on a pitch count anyway, so there's no telling how deep he could have gone to that game and how long he could have potentially held up that no-hitter, himself. So you feel good about that. Again, Kimball will continue to work in and get up to that full allotment of pitches, hopefully here soon. And similar situation with Matthew Becker, who's getting the start tonight, or this afternoon, against Queens, where he's going to be on a pitch count, working back from injury. But he's somebody that you certainly expect to factor in to the starting rotation once he does get back to full strength. Two guys that really have stuck out to me so far, and the benefit of winning these games the way that South Carolina's won them is that we've seen a fair amount of pitchers in each matchup to kind of get a sense of who some of these newer guys are and where they factor in. I was thoroughly impressed with Eddie Copper last night. Not just for the performance that he put in, but rebounding from how Friday night went for him. I mean, I can't think of a worse situation to make a debut than to be bounced after 5 pitches and giving up a hit the other night. And you worry about the confidence level of a kid like that, and for him to come out last night the way that he did and go 4 strong innings, only giving up 1 hit, no runs, 3 walks, and 2 strikeouts. That's about as good as you can ask for a guy still early on, his career, as young as he is. So a good bounce back for him. Impressed by that. As well, Ty Good, who was a great pitcher at College of Charleston. Seen him in a couple of consecutive games now and has done a really good job. Had the 2 innings of work in that no-hitter on Sunday, and then put in a solid inning and 2/3 last night as well. So he's somebody that South Carolina, I imagine, is going to be relying on a lot this year when it comes to coming out of the bullpen. And again, we're still early on in the season, so those are still trying to kind of figure out those rotations and, who to slot where exactly, which is why you play these kind of games early on in the season to be able to, figure those kind of things out. So feeling good about it. Again, back here on the mound tonight, where I imagine, just end up being a staff night after he gets his allotment of pitches in, and then we'll go from there, getting set for the Belmont Series coming up this weekend. I want to shift gears a little bit over to college football as we now, continue to talk about things that are trending around the world of sports. Kalen DeBoer last night did indeed hire his offensive coordinator to replace, I don't want to say replace because Ryan Grubb never officially had the job, but to take the place that Ryan Grubb was anticipating to take before he decided to stay in Seattle and be with the Seahawks. He's hired Nick Sheridan as the OC and Jamarcus Shepard as the co-offensive coordinator out there in Alabama. Nick Sheridan had been his tight ends coach at Washington the past couple years, also worked with him at Indiana as a co-OC and the quarterback's coach as well. And then Jamarcus Shepard, also similarly to Nick Sheridan, very familiar with Kalen DeBoer from his time at Washington, was there as an assistant head coach, pass game coordinator, and a wide receivers coach as well. So a couple guys that he's very familiar with. Clearly not the top options on his list because it seemed that Ryan Brewer was there and ready to go, and then he wasn't. But again, so many questions around the Alabama team for this entire offseason, just really not knowing how good they're going to be. I still retain the fair amount of the talent, so I don't think it's unrealistic to think that they can be a 10-win team, but can they perform at that same high level that they were under Nick Saban? Maybe, maybe not. It's tough to say right now. We'll have to actually see these teams in action, but for the time being, they've at least figured out the offensive coordinator thing again after Ryan Grubb, and kind of what went down the other week in ultimately in reference to that. College Football Playoff Committee or Board of Managers, officially confirmed that they are going with the 5-7 model for the first year of the college football playoff after they had that meeting on Tuesday. This is something that had been rumored for a very long time because originally the idea was 6-6, then the Pac-12 dissolves away into being the Pac-2 to where it's like, okay, we got to come up with something a little bit different. So you just remove one of the automatic qualifiers and then open up an extra at-large spot, which I think everybody was able to agree on relatively easily. So you'll have your 4 power conference champions, SEC, Big Ten, Big 12, and ACC, and then 1 group of 5 champion. I do find this interesting in reading up about this yesterday, something that has not really been discussed in this, and this is from the ESPN article about it yesterday. The college football playoff intentionally won't refer to the group of 5 in its description of the format, though, because there is a chance that a champion from one of the Power 4 conferences finishes ranked below the top champion from the AAC, Conference USA, Mountain West, Sunbelt, or Mid-American Conference. So what that essentially means, I think we've all been preconceived to this notion that, okay, once you have this new playoff 12 team, that the top 4 are always going to be SEC, Big 10, Big 12, and ACC. That's not necessarily the case. Let's think back to a couple seasons ago when Cincinnati was in the top 4 and actually made the college football playoff. In a theoretical scenario, if the 12-team playoff was around then, being the fact that they were number 4 and were one of the 4 highest-rated conference champions, they would have received the first-round bye. So, and again, I don't know why we all thought this, because this situation certainly makes sense, but I think we all kind of assumed that the group of 5 team was just going to be tagged on to the end of the 12-team field, or, be the 8 or 9 seed or whatever, depending on where the rankings were. But there is a realistic chance, and I thought about this when I read this last night, that, how funny, maybe not funny if you're a Florida State fan, how ironically funny would it be if in the first year of the 12-team college football playoff, where we're guaranteeing every, major conference champion gets in, like Florida State wins the ACC and is not one of the top 4 highest-ranked conference champions and still has to end up hosting a first-round game as opposed to getting a bye. Like, I just have a weird feeling something like that can happen, because when you look at the, group of 5 conferences, it's not realistic to get in the top 10. But this gives them the opportunity to, again, maybe even get that first-round bye. And this is all just for the next 2 years, because we're going to blow it up and start it all over in 2026, because the original contract of the college football playoff only runs through 2025. So we're going to do this for 2 years and then figure out what the heck we're going to do from 26 and beyond. I've been an advocate for 12 teams, the top 12 teams, no matter what, which I think the SEC and the Big Ten are going to push for, because that could theoretically guarantee them more spots in the college football playoff. And, the ACC and the Big 12 certainly want a seat at the table, but I don't know if their voice is strong enough to sway keeping the 5 and 7 model around when the SEC and the Big Ten control so much as far as the power and the resources go in college sports. So be interesting to see, but for the time being, the next 2 years, we have our college football playoff format, 5 and 7 model, top 4 conference champions get a bye, and then the rest is settled through the first round games in mid-December, weekend roughly before Christmas. So yeah, that's only 10 months away from now. Crazy to think. Hopefully the offseason is short and quick and we can get to this and see how it unfolds. I want to jump back into the conversation Terry and I were having at the end of the last hour about the NCAA and Charlie Baker. Sean Elliott said something in his press conference yesterday that I feel like ties in pretty well. We'll dive into that coming up. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Terry Ford will be back with me in a few moments here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head along with you. Terry Ford will be back in with me in just a few moments. I want to go back to a conversation we were having at the end of the last hour. Charlie Baker, the president of the NCAA, said that he did not feel any sympathy for the coaches that are upset about, the frivolousness of transfers in today's world of college football, because those coaches have the ability to go wherever they want at any time and not face, the repercussions of the penalties that the student athletes have had to deal with in the past. And, I want to go back to yesterday afternoon, morning, I guess, when Sean Elliott was talking to the media. This quote, I believe it was Matt Berry of ESPN, put it out there when Sean Elliott announced he was leaving Georgia State to come to South Carolina to be the tight ends coach and run game coordinator. That just kind of went back to this overall, trend in college football of guys leaving their positions for things that or new spots that, years ago they would have never done. And Sean Elliott was asked specifically about the NIL component and him leaving Georgia State when he did.
You're talking about, the NIL and retaining players and not getting, quote unquote poached. And, I think we lost, I'm not certain on this, but I think we lost 22 players at Georgia State to Power 5 programs over the last 2 years, or the last 3 years. And that's a huge amount. They were all really, really good football players, but that had no effect on me wanting to come back to the University of South Carolina or take this job. I'm never a person that runs from a problem. I've always found a solution on how to fix it. So that didn't have any effect. Like I said, the most important people in my life live here in the state of South Carolina, especially here in the Columbia area. And ultimately, that is what I wanted in my life, and I needed to have that back in my life.
And okay, for one, that's the right thing to say, especially now that you're a place that is pushing for it. It's very prominent. For its NIL to be even more prominent than, it already is. And I think there's an air of believability to that, because no coach wants to admit that they hate NIL. No coach wants to say, yep, I can't take the heat in the tub on this one. I need to get out. They want to all paint the picture of, hey, I'm going to be head on with this and deal with it, because that's what we have to do to win. And going back to what Charlie Baker said, it's not just the transfer thing that is upsetting coaches. And on the coach side of things, it's not just the NIL component that's upsetting them. It's the sum of the whole parts. You have NIL, you have the openness of transferring, you have a chaotic college football calendar. Everything's so wide open. It's hard to wrangle in. And as we've talked about many times, when you let the toothpaste out of the tube, it's really hard. It's pretty much impossible to get back in there. So there's this, conversation of, we'll just put everything back the way that it was. It's not that simple. You can't just simply put things back the way that they were in the landscape of college football, because, again, unfortunately, when you change things, not everything can be changed back to the way that it was. And again, when we talk about especially things with transfers now that NIL is the thing, you start violating antitrust laws, and that leads to more, that ends up leading to more lawsuits, which the NCAA continues to lose, and it's just kind of like this never-ending cycle. So college football, college sports in general, are never going back to the way that they were 5, 10, 15 years ago, whatever your chosen destination in the path may end up being. We just have to find a way to come to better solutions with today's set of rules. And that doesn't mean that players can't transfer. That doesn't mean guys can't get NIL. That doesn't mean that we can't get creative with the calendar. Again, it's just, it can be better than what it currently is. And I think that's a lot of the frustration that the coaches have, is like, hey, it's not just this one thing. If it was just coaches saying, well, I hate the fact that these players can transfer, I got to re-recruit my own guys, blah, 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 I'd be right there with Charlie Baker saying, yeah, cry me a river. So what? You guys have the ability to move and leave and go to other jobs without any penalty besides a buyout. But the fact that it's NIL, it's high school recruiting, and it's all being done in this chaotic, topsy-turvy calendar that doesn't make sense, I understand where the coaches are coming from. And I can also understand why some of them are saying, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. Not to say they won't come back. They just may need to wait it out a little bit. Let the powers that be, whoever that may be, figure out better solutions for what we're currently doing. Then I think this trend starts to slow down a little bit. Or guys being able to say, you know what, I'm competent. I'm competent with the way things are structured, and I'll keep doing this. Because again, when you have coaches now that make the money that they make, which, you know, is only a recent phenomenon when you think about it. I mean, gosh, what Spurrier's contract here in 2005 was like 1.2, 1.25. I mean, there are coordinators that make more than that now. So the money going for head coaches just keeps going up and up and up and up, to where, as opposed to in the past, you didn't have to coach in one place for 30 years or 20 years or whatever it may be to make that exuberant amount of money just to be able to retire comfortably when you're 65 or 70. I mean, if you really want to put it in perspective, like Dabo, Kirby Smart, those guys, they could retire right now and live comfortably for the rest of their lives without ever having to work a day again. Now, they don't want to do that because they're competitors and they want to go out there and win and put the best football teams on the field. The money for most of these guys has never been the motivating factor. It's something that comes along with being good and successful at what you're doing. But when you talk about these guys and saying, hey, you know, it's too much, and, you know, taken away from family time and all that kind of stuff, that they just say, you know what, I'm out. Maybe I'll go sit at the ESPN desk. Maybe you do whatever. But I got millions and millions of dollars in the bank where I can live comfortably for the next 40 to 50 years without having to work another day. Like, I think there are coaches out there that'll be content with that. Now, after a year or two, they may get that bug of like, I don't care what the structure of the landscape is. I just want to coach again, and end up coming back, because we've seen plenty of coaches make comebacks after announcing that they were initially done. So never say never, but my goal and my hope is that these things can be flattened out relatively soon. What does that look like? I don't know. I don't think any of us truly know how you achieve that, because if it was that easy, it would have been done at this point in time. But at some point in the near future, because now I think enough people have been alerted to it and aware of the issues of the whole landscape that things may finally be on the horizon of actually changing. And we'll have to see. But again, Sean Elliott saying that the NIL thing didn't drive him away, and Charlie Baker not mincing words when it comes to coaches who are worried about guys transferring out. We'll hit the greatest day in the history of the world coming up next. It is Wednesday, February the 21st. It's the halftime show. Tyler Head, Terry Ford will be back with me momentarily here on The Game. Oh, it's an exciting time now that baseball has gotten back going once again. I want to remind you about the Rivalry Friday ticket giveaway. If you want to see the Gamecocks take on the Clemson Tigers out at Founders Park on March the 1st, all you got to do is go to our YouTube channel at The Game TV on YouTube and subscribe. Like, literally, that's it. Just go to YouTube, subscribe, and then go to 1075thegame.com and fill out the form and hit submit. That's it. No purchase necessary. None of that stuff. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Game TV on YouTube. Go fill out the form at 1075thegame.com. Submit, and you could be lucky enough to score tickets to see the Gamecocks and the Clemson Tigers coming up next Friday, March the 1st, out at Founders Park. Rivalry Friday ticket giveaway. Go online to 1075thegame.com and The Game TV on YouTube for your chance to win.
Time for the greatest day in the history of the world, February 21st. Sponsored by 1-800-GOT-JUNK on the halftime show. All right, here's a couple of weird ones, Tyler. When do you think the first Major League night game was played in baseball? I didn't know this.
That's a good question. 1975?
I was thinking sometime in the 60s.
Okay.
Was my thought.
All right.
1931, the first Major League night game, Chicago White Sox played the New York Giants in a 10-inning exhibition game in Houston. That's not random at all.
No.
Why are the White Sox and the Giants playing in Houston in a 10-inning exhibition game under the lights?
I'm curious how they lit that game because, I mean...
Oh, it's like, you know what it was? Like Bagger Vance. They all pulled their cars up and turned on the lights.
Because I was like, we live in a day and age now with these, LED lights where, one gleam of them can light up the entire field. And I don't think they had that technology back then. I don't think, what's the name of that lighting company that makes all the ones for the, for stadiums? I forget. They're on, it's a brand. I forget the name of it, but they didn't have those back in the 30s.
I mean, they didn't have a light set up like Williams-Brice at night games?
No,
in the 30s?
I don't think they were doing LEDs, no red lights, no flashing lights. I think it was like, hey, we're glad the lights are on.
Yeah, everybody light a match and stand by the field.
And if the lights randomly go out, well, the game's over.
Oh, well. You think about today, like everybody can just stand and light and turn the flashlight on their phone.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's the world. It's the world we live in. 1952, this is another one. All right, the Boston Celtics and the Fort Wayne Pistons tipped off at midnight. It was called the Milkman Special, following an Ice Follies performance at the Boston Garden. Almost 2,400 people showed up for this game. Think about this in today's NBA. Hey, guys, we're going to have to tip this sucker off at about midnight. We got an Ice Follies, and after it, we got to get the ice off the court, and we got to redo the court. So we're going to start the game about midnight.
In today's day and age, the Ice Follies?
The Ice Follies, yes.
They would be moved to a different venue in town. Sorry, you can't have the Garden.
Well, first of all, right, you wouldn't have the Garden. Two, Boston would be scheduled to be on the road during Ice Follies. So it's just funny how things happen way back in the day. Hey, we're going to play at midnight because the Ice Follies have to go first.
Right.
Everybody okay with that? Oh, man. Also, the greatest day in the history of the world. Pete Maravich at LSU scored 64 points in a loss to Kentucky. Kentucky great Dan Issel, who played in the ABA and the NBA and had a great pro career. Issel scored 51 for Kentucky. Pete Maravich bagged 64 of LSU's 105 points.
Jeez.
LSU lost. Pete Maravich was such a great college player. Again, before my time.
Yep.
But everything I've ever seen or read about how good Pete Maravich was, he played for his dad, Press Maravich.
Yeah, my dad got to see him play with the Hawks when he was a kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he played for the Hawks, the Jazz. Pete Maravich, the NBA player, as much as people love Pete Maravich as a pro, Pete Maravich in college,
yeah.
If you just sit and see the numbers and you just go, oh, my God, this guy was ridiculous at LSU. And I always like to see the Pete Maravich numbers and just to look at them to see just how vile they are.
Right.
And he was so far ahead of his time as a ball handler and a dribbler. And, and again, I'm just real quick bring up, all right, his college career, he averaged in 3 seasons 44 points a game.
Jeez.
And that's 3 years. Remember, freshmen weren't eligible. Now, in the NBA... Don't get me wrong, he averaged 24 points a game in the league. But that's a lot less than 44 a game. And he never had a season in the NBA until late in his career where he didn't score, take it back 1 year where he didn't score 20, scored 19.3. So Maravich always scored buckets. But in college, I mean, wow. What he did in college was unbelievable. And his career was Atlanta, New Orleans, finished up Utah, Boston. But what he did, his college numbers, you have to always double take.
Sure.
When you see his college numbers. I'll get a couple more in here real quick. Michael Jordan in 2003 became the first 40-year-old in NBA history to score 40 or more points as the Wizards beat New Jersey 89-86. Now, Jordan is 40 years old, scores 43. Wizards scored 89. Run that one through your head.
Yeah, that kind of explains.
Let me real quick. Let me just say this. Look, I was a Jordan guy. I was a fan, always an MJ guy. I wasn't supposed to like him in North Carolina because he played for North Carolina, and Maryland was my favorite team. And back then, they went at it in the ACC.
Sure.
But I always was a Jordan fan. And I'll say this though: did I like seeing him put that Wizards gear on? No.
Sure.
Should have never done it, right? In my opinion, as a fan. But there are people who really like, oh, he tarnished his legacy. No, he didn't. Does anybody even think about when he played for the Wizards besides we make a joke about it?
No, it's kind of one of those things when you've achieved the level of success that he did. I mean, nothing's going to tarnish your legacy. If Tom Brady decided to play for the Buccaneers for another 7 years and they never made the playoffs again, we'd still talk about him as the greatest quarterback of all time.
You don't lose your legacy.
You don't.
Your legacy is your legacy. And if you end your career, if you state like Willie Mays,
Sure.
all I ever heard from guys in my dad's generation is how sad they were for Willie Mays at the end of his career because he played too long. Played for the Mets. He was past his prime and blah, blah, blah. And they all said, oh, it was terrible. It was awful to see him run around and play like that after he was so great.
Yeah.
That's his choice. That didn't ruin his legacy or they didn't say, okay, dude, we're not letting you in the Hall of Fame because you played too long.
Sure. Well, and it's one of those things that now with the way contracts are structured, most like great athletes, whether it be football, baseball, basketball, or whatever, typically don't end their careers with the team that they had their most success with. Now, Peyton Manning's the example of the guy that went out on top winning a Super Bowl, and Tom Brady nearly did it, decided to go for, an extra year or so. But for the most part, these guys rarely spend one career with one single team. So, I feel like that doesn't tarnish your legacy. You still accomplish what you accomplished in the past. Now, yeah, you would ideally like them to not go out looking sad and miserable, but, that's up to them. If they want to keep playing, let them keep playing.
I always say if they keep calling you,
well,
answer the phone and go play if you want to.
And here's the thing with his time in Washington. I'd love to know what their ticket sales were like prior to him getting there, when he was there, and when he was gone. Because regardless of if he's playing good or not, you still go see Michael Jordan play.
Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And the Wizards have been a punchline for so long in D.C. and in the NBA. Were you here? We were telling the story. For my kid's birthday, he got tickets to go see the Bucks and the Sixers in Philly.
Okay.
And we wanted him to see the Bucks because his favorite player is Giannis.
Yeah.
And so we were looking in Philly because, again, the Sixers are good. They don't have Embiid, but they're still good. And then we started looking in D.C. because the prices were like, 2 tickets were like $500 and some bucks, right?
Yeah.
And this is like mid-level. We're not talking about courts. A courtside was like 18 grand.
Sure.
You get to sit in Giannis's lap. So then we looked in D.C. for Wizards Bucks tickets. Now in Philly they start in the hundreds. In D.C. they start at $33.
Yeah, they pay you to come.
Well, they do. They write you a check. So the Wizards don't matter, and you're right. I mean, they actually sold tickets in the Jordan era, and even though he was 40 and he was past his prime, but my thing is, we always, go after these players for, oh, you played too long, oh, you ruined your legacy, you should have retired him, you should have retired. I don't tell anybody when to quit.
Sure.
You quit when you want to quit, or they stop calling you to play, right?
Right.
You don't ruin I always say this, the legacy police don't show up at your house.
Right.
And say, I need your legacy, sir. That last year was embarrassing. I mean, Jordan in D.C., it was weird to see him in a Wizards uni.
Yeah.
But it doesn't ruin his legacy.
Well, again, now, it's something we joke about, but it's not something we sit in here and debate. It's like, well, if he hadn't gone to the Wizards, then we would have, viewed his career a whole lot highlighter. It's like, no, it's just a funny picture to put up every now and then and say, hey, remember when this happened?
And it gives us a minute and a half to kill talking about this in history. That's about it. And one last one. Ready? 2016, who won the Daytona 500?
2016, Denny Hamlin beat Martin Truex Jr., closest Daytona 500 finish ever.
You honestly, you're Rain Man.
Yeah.
You're Rain Man of NASCAR. Because that's exactly what it says in history.
Yeah.
2016, 58th Daytona 500. Denny Hamlin wins, closest finish in race history by 0.01 seconds over Martin Truex.
Yep.
You're impressive, sir. All right, so there you go. That's the greatest day in the history of the world. Brought to you by 1-800-GOT-JUNK. A couple tickets to go see today's game. 4 o'clock first pitch. Caller number 3 wins 2 tickets to go see South Carolina and Queens right now, 803-404-6100. One other thing before I forget and we get out of here. 803-875-MENS, the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. You know, I get it. We're guys. We don't like to talk about anything. Nothing's wrong with us. We're okay. It'll be better tomorrow. Oh, I'll take a couple ibuprofen. Oh, well, whatever. We do it all the time. But sometimes, you know, you just don't feel right. You have no life drive, professional drive, personal drive, sex drive. You're just not sleeping well. You know, your exercising stinks. Your recovery stinks. Brain fog's driving you crazy. You can't remember anything anymore. Men's Clinic of South Carolina, just go see if it's just low testosterone. It's very simple. 803-875-MENS. You call, set the appointment. It's free. It's confidential with Dr. Dan and the staff. Tell them your story. If it is low T, they'll do lab work. If it comes back low testosterone, they'll put you on a personalized plan for you, specifically designed for you. Men's Clinic of South Carolina, do yourself a favor and go get checked out. 803-875-MENS, the Men's Clinic of South Carolina. All righty, it's time to check the old Firehouse sub text line, 803-404-6100. What do you got there, Tyler Head?
Yeah, so we asked the question earlier about the lighting that is prevalent across all sporting venues these days. It's Musco. Musco's the lighting company. I knew it was something like that.
I couldn't remember. I was sitting there going,
Yeah, they're like the LED, all the stadiums use that kind of lighting.
General Electric? I couldn't remember.
Yeah,
but
so thank you, Nameless.
Thank you. We appreciate that very much.
I don't think they were around for that
Don't think
1930s game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, again, I didn't look it up, but first night regular season game is what I'd want to know.
Yeah.
But the first one ever was an exhibition game in Houston 30 years before Houston got a baseball team.
I was going to say, it's kind of funny now when you think about how prevalent night games are in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
When there's an afternoon game, you're like, well, that's kind of weird. They have the businessmen special in the middle of the week where you play like a 1 o'clock start on a Wednesday. You're like, who's going to go see that?
I mean, it's funny because, I remember like the generation before me, all the World Series games are played during the day.
Which is insane to think about. Like, TV executives would have meltdowns now if that was still the case.
I know. You're like, well, why are we doing that? Everybody's at work. Why are we doing that? But back then, it was just a tradition of the World Series were day games. When I was a kid, they would have because, like the ALCS, NLCS, like one would be at night, one would be during the day.
Right.
That's how but there was night games all the time.
Yeah.
So the idea that there was no night playoff games, you're like, wow, whose idea was actually that?
Well, I was going to say, everything's done to maximize viewership now. It drives me crazy that the World Series starts at like 8:15 on weeknights now, and now the pitch clock sped things up a little bit. But for a while there, it's like, well, this game isn't ending until midnight.
That's what's so weird about it, though, is everybody complains about World Series games starting too late. I don't disagree. I think the same way. Especially we've established the fact I can't stay awake, at Mardi Gras.
Right.
But it's like nobody screams and yells about the NBA finals starting at 9 o'clock at night, or, why is the NCAA championship game start tipping off at 9? But baseball starting late drives everybody crazy.
I will say I don't like the national championship starting super late either, even though the basketball is a more concise and quicker sport. So those games don't necessarily go until midnight. But I like what the college football's done with in the past couple of years, saying, hey, we're going to kick the national championship off at, it's really like 7:40, but 7:30 technically.
Well, they know that thing's going to go for 4 hours.
Sure.
That's the thing. These games still go after 11.
Yeah.
Basketball, the baseball game can trail up, especially before the pitch clock. It can go near midnight and people go to bed. But look, there's a good chance people go to bed at 11 o'clock. No matter, now you're going to stay awake an extra half hour, 40 minutes to watch the basketball game. Okay. But I just find it funny that all these things end too late now.
Sure.
But we always everybody, because you know what it is? Everybody goes after baseball in general. Baseball is it's become the piñata of professional sports.
Well,
in the last 20 years, because everything it seems like they do is wrong up until this past year. Well, I'll give them credit. They did a lot of things right to make the game more watchable.
Yeah, I think the pitch clock, the shift banding, it all ended up working out really well. And look, I didn't know how I was going to feel about it or how it would affect the game. But once you really got a couple weeks into the season, you didn't really think about it anymore.
Yeah, and it's going to change. In some ways, this is funny because I've never been a big Rob Manfred guy. I'm not a big commissioner guy in general.
You only got to deal with him for 5 more years.
Exactly. I think all commissioners basically are Muppets for the owners anyway.
Sure. But
I'll give Manfred credit. All those changes have worked out well. And think about this for a minute. It's going to change how we look at him as a commissioner.
Sure.
All of a sudden, he's going to be the guy that saved baseball. The guy that changed baseball.
I wouldn't go that far.
The guy that made baseball more watchable again.
I think he's goofed up on enough things that he's at best trying to even it out.
I'm not a Manfred guy. I thought Selig was not the best choice for a commissioner because he was just an owner.
Sure.
And, I was never a Bud Selig guy, not a Manfred guy. But I'll give Rob Manfred credit for last year. He made a lot of really good moves that the game became a lot more watchable than it's been in the last so many years.
Absolutely.
So I'll give him props. But again, none of those guys, like Adam Silver going crazy over the All-Star game. Really?
Broken clock's right twice a day.
Exactly. Silver, I mean, you don't even really talk about it, but look, I don't tell people how to think. If you want to get mad or they don't play defense in an NBA All-Star game, if you really want to spend the day screaming on social media, being angry about a game that's not real, with guys not playing defense, I just don't watch it.
That's what we do, Terry. We get mad about irrational things.
Exactly. You know what? I like the slam dunk when the stars were in it. And look, Mac McClung was fantastic. Don't get me wrong. I don't watch the NBA slam dunk competition anymore. I just don't, because it doesn't interest me. I don't yell about it. I just don't watch it. You know, you don't want the NBA guys to not play defense? Don't watch it if you don't like the way they play, I guess. All right, we're done.